That attack in Pahalgam on April 22nd, it was just horrific. Seeing those innocent tourists, people from Bengal, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Odia, Gujarat, Bihar, all caught up in it, it really sparked nationwide grief and, well, a lot of anger, too.
It really did. And the fact that the victims were from all over India just underlined how terrorism hits everyone, how this act cut deep across the whole country.
And you had Prime Minister Modi coming out very strongly, vowing a decisive response, specifically mentioning it would come from Bihar. That really set the tone, didn't it?
It certainly did. It signaled that a significant reaction was coming.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Operation Sindoor, this was India's response, launched May 7th. What we really want to unpack today is the impact, specifically the repercussions for Pakistan. What did they actually experience after this?
Yeah. What was the fallout on their side?
Exactly. We're drawing on, statements from Indian political figures, news reports, Indian ones like the Economic Times, but also international sources, New York Times, Washington Post, and even some quite detailed YouTube discussions with analysts.
Right. Polling from different angles is crucial here. We need to understand the military fallout, yes, but also the strategic shifts, maybe even the mood within Pakistan itself.
So Operation Sindoor kicks off May 7th. 9 terror-linked sites targeted in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What really jumped out at me was how the Indian Army framed it. A measured act of justice, not revenge. Aiming to teach a lesson for generations. What should we read into that?
That phrasing, measured act of justice, it's very deliberate. It suggests this wasn't just lashing out emotionally, it was calculated, targeted. The focus on specific terror infrastructure hideouts, training centers, places like Bahawalpur and Mrudke, which, let's be honest, have been called universities of global terrorism. It points to a clear strategic goal: dismantle their ability to operate.
And the results reported were quite stark, weren't they? Over 100 terrorists supposedly killed, including some figures who'd been around for a long time. Plus that claim about taking out Pakistan's main terror command center. That sounds like it would really hurt them.
Oh, absolutely. If those reports hold up, losing over 100 operatives, especially key leaders, that's a major blow. It cripples their immediate capacity, their planning, their morale. Destroying a central headquarters, as claimed, disrupts everything. It's a significant setback.
Okay, so Pakistan hits back, some shelling across the line of control, that border in Kashmir, and they tried some drone attacks. But then India didn't stop there. A second wave came, hitting 11 Pakistani air bases, radar sites, communication centers. That feels like a definite step up.
It absolutely is. Moving from terror sites to establish military infrastructure like air bases and radar systems, that signals a much broader objective. It's about degrading Pakistan's actual conventional military power, their ability to project force, their eyes and ears, essentially.
And we heard reports that Pakistan's own drones and missiles just, didn't really make it through India's air defenses. Reports mention they fell like straws. Plus, damage to their airfields, even the runways. That paints a picture of India having a clear upper hand in that exchange.
It certainly suggests a significant gap in capability, or at least effectiveness, at that moment. If your retaliation is largely ineffective, and your own key infrastructure like runways gets damaged, it severely limits your options. It also points to potential weaknesses in their defense systems.
And then there was that follow-up claim about destroying enemy posts along the Law Sea that violated the ceasefire on May 9th.
Right, which reinforces that assertive posture from India, policing the ceasefire aggressively.
Some reports went even further, though. Talk of 9 Pakistani air bases being hit, and even speculation about a nuclear command center being targeted. That sounds incredibly serious.
Extremely serious. Targeting anything related to nuclear command and control, even if it's just alleged or unconfirmed, sends a very powerful, very escalatory message. It touches their most sensitive point.
And there were those other whispers, too, about their Chinese air defense systems failing, Pakistani aircraft potentially being shot down.
Yeah.
If any of that is true, it points to some major vulnerabilities being exposed.
Definitely. A failing air defense system, especially one sourced from a major partner like China, would be a huge concern.
Yeah.
Losing aircraft in the exchange, too. You can imagine the impact that would have on morale, not just in the military, but also among the terror groups they allegedly support. It shakes confidence.
So after all this, reports surfaced that Pakistan was reaching out internationally, trying to get help to cool things down, apparently after taking heavy hits. How did the world see this initially? What was the media narrative?
Well, initially, international media was, cautious. reporting claims from both sides. But then the satellite imagery started coming out. Companies like Max Technologies, Planet Labs, that seemed to shift things.
Ah, the imagery. What did that show?
It reportedly showed pretty significant damage. At the Bellari Air Base, an F-16 hangar looked damaged. Damage was also reported at Noor Khan Air Base near Islamabad and Rahim Yar Khan further south. Independent visual evidence.
Right, so that makes it harder to deny, because Pakistan initially said no significant damage.
Right, exactly. They downplayed it heavily at first. But then later you had figures, including their own prime minister, actually acknowledging Indian ballistic missiles hitting places like Noor Khan Airport and other areas. That's a big shift.
So the evidence, the pictures, basically forced their hand.
It seems that way. When you have verifiable satellite data, it's hard to maintain a complete denial. And you saw that reflected in the reporting from major outlets like the New York Times, Washington Post, Reuters. They started acknowledging the real extent of the damage India inflicted. It kind of blew up Pakistan's initial narrative.
You have to think about the impact inside Pakistan, too. All these strikes, especially the rumor about a nuclear command site being hit, reports mentioned panic. What does that do internally?
Well, panic is a strong word, but reports suggested significant anxiety. If people believe your most secure assets, like nuclear command facilities, might be vulnerable, that creates deep unease. It questions the state's ability to protect its ultimate deterrent.
And it wasn't just public anxiety, was it? There were reports of criticism aimed at the leadership, people demanding accountability for how things played out.
Yes, that's a natural reaction. When there's a perception of a major military setback or failure, questions inevitably turn towards the leadership. Calls for accountability rise up.
Plus, we heard about certain Pakistani YouTube channels being banned, allegedly because they were reporting details about the situation. That suggests an effort to control the narrative domestically.
Which often happens in these situations. Trying to manage information flow internally, perhaps to quell criticism or prevent further panic. But suppressing information can also backfire, fueling more distrust.
There was also that interesting sideline about some figures in Pakistan, often described as liberals, reportedly aligning with more hardline, maybe even extremist views during the conflict. What does that tell us?
It highlights how complex Pakistani society is, and how external conflict or perceived national crises can scramble internal political alignments. Sometimes, nationalistic fervor can override other ideological stances, leading to unexpected alliances or shifts in rhetoric.
Let's switch gears slightly to the economic side. This must have put immense pressure on Pakistan economically, too. There was talk about the Indus Waters Treaty.
The critical issue.
Yeah, the possibility of India suspending or changing the terms of that treaty, that would be devastating for Pakistan's agriculture, wouldn't it? Especially with reports that water supply might have already been briefly suspended after Pahalgam.
Absolutely devastating. The Indus Waters Treaty is fundamental for Pakistan. Any disruption, even the threat of disruption, creates huge economic uncertainty and potential hardship, particularly for their water-intensive agricultural sector. It adds another layer of serious pressure on an already fragile economy.
And it wasn't just the water. Potential for wider isolation, maybe in sports like cricket, broader economic heat. It seems like they were getting squeezed from multiple directions.
That's the picture painted, yes. Increased isolation, mounting economic pressure. It makes their celebrating, a relatively small IMF loan seem quite ironic in the larger context of these massive challenges. The economic vulnerability really compounds everything else.
All of this, taken together, it really does feel like a major shift in how India approaches these situations. This talk of a new doctrine of disproportionate response, that's a very different message than before.
It's a fundamental change, potentially. Moving from tit-for-tat or proportional responses to saying, if provoked, the response will be significantly heavier. It aims to reset the deterrence equation, signaling much higher costs for future acts of aggression or terrorism sponsorship.
And Prime Minister Modi explicitly talking about neutralizing Pakistan's nuclear threats. That's very direct language on a hugely sensitive topic.
Extremely direct. Publicly stating an intention to counter or neutralize a nuclear deterrent is a bold strategic declaration. It signals a new level of confidence from India and perhaps a belief that the old rules of nuclear deterrence in the region are being rewritten.
And internally in India, it seems this whole episode, starting with the tragedy in Pahalgam, created a real sense of unity, didn't it, across political divides, and maybe more public backing for stronger measures against Pakistan.
That often happens after such attacks. A sense of shared grief and anger can forge national unity. Reports did suggest increased public support in India for decisive action. even potentially considering more unconventional options like supporting separatist movements inside Pakistan, like in Balochistan.
So reflecting on the aftermath of Pahalgam and Operation Sindoor, Pakistan seems to have suffered quite significantly. Damage to military sites, their defenses shown to be vulnerable, international image taking a hit, economic worries mounting, political pressure internally, and facing a neighbor signaling a much tougher, less predictable response doctrine.
Yes, the list of repercussions is long and varied: military, strategic, diplomatic, economic, societal. It does seem Operation Sindoor was designed to send an unmistakable message, a lesson, as the Indian Army put it.
It really hammers home the focus on the suffering and setbacks for Pakistan post-Pahalgam. So the big question left hanging then is, given all this, the internal turmoil, the external pressures, the clear shift from India, what does Pakistan do now? What long-term strategic changes might they actually be forced to make regarding India, regarding terrorism?
That is the crucial question moving forward. Will this lead to a genuine strategic rethink within Pakistan, a move away from using proxies? Or will it lead to further entrenchment and potentially more instability? The choices they make now will have huge implications for peace and security across the entire region. It leaves you wondering what path they'll actually choose.